talk to us about the significance of having a special day like this to look at the plight of the Palestinian people.
A special day like this is very important from all aspects. Let's first look at the Israelis who went through the Holocaust. You know, they were dehumanized, they were maltreated, they were exterminated. So if we only use Israel as a reference point, you know, we can see where the entire world must focus on humanitarianism and what is important and expected for humans to behave and live on this planet. So what is happening with Israel and Palestine is significant because both sides have to look at what they don't want. What don't we want? We don't want destruction and extermination of our people. We don't want our people to be wiped out from the face of this earth. So both sides have to exercise and should have been exercising caution and be accommodating to each other. After all, they've come from the same father, you know, going back to Abraham and others. So they are all brothers or cousins, if you want to call it. But of more concern of an international day is that we don't even look at the plights of Africans. So this day is significant because we have Africans who need reparation, who have been exterminated by Belgium and other countries, the Native Americans. So this day is significant if we have to, as humans, look at what is it that we are talking about here. We are talking about humanitarian issues. We are talking about living together. We are talking about working together. We're talking about loving and embracing each other. So the UN International Day is significant, very significant for all of us as humans, because every one of us, Africans, Blacks, Native Indians, Native Americans, Israelis, Palestinians, have all been attacked with the view, that is the important thing, with the view of extermination. And, you know, thank God that there was an intervention and the war was lost in Germany to stop the extermination of Jews. But Israel should also be thinking, you don't want to be called and labeled as being responsible for exterminating Palestinians. And also by the same token, the West now and the rest of the world must also look into the extermination issues that has happened from Africans, because I'm a Pan-Africanist. So I want to raise all those things as part of the International Human Rights Day. What are we doing to appease and reparation for what has gone on with Africans? More concerned also is that what is happening to Africans in Israel? What is happening to Africans in Palestine? Those are questions too that must be addressed if we are talking about international humanitarianism.
Thank you, Ambassador Wallace, for joining us on the show this morning. So I want to ask, by a General Assembly in 1947, they recommended the partition of Palestine into independent Arab and Jewish states. That's what it looks like the genesis of this whole issue between Israel and Palestine is. Could that be said to be correct, that recommendation by the General Assembly for the partition of Palestine into Arab and independent Arab and Jewish states is the foundation of this crisis? And if so, how would it have been best to resolve the issue?
I didn't hear you clearly, but however, I think you talked about partitioning and the idea of a dual state. The genesis of separating and going into a place that is already occupied and then occupying it and then deciding that there must be two states. If it was an agreement that was accepted by the owners of the land or the settlers of the land, then that's all fair and good. But was it? That's the point that has to be made. Was it? Was it an accepted arrangement between the Arabs and the Jews. Hey, we want a place to live, and do you mind if we, work together and give us some space in your area to settle? After all, we've had settlers all over the world before. Some were taken arbitrarily, and some were in agreement. You have, for example, in Nigeria, people that move from one area to another and settle, and they become homogeneous with the population there, and they live in peace and harmony. But then you have those who land grab and then forcefully take other people's land. What was it? What was agreed? That agreement, was it between the two peoples? That's the question that has to be asked.
So I would like you to take a listen. Let me read to you part of the resolutions that was done by the United Nations in 1977. And I wonder if this was done in 1977. We're in 2023 now. Take a listen. It says about the unresolved question. It says the question of Palestine remains unresolved, and then the Palestinian people are yet to attain their rights as defined by the General Assembly, namely the right to self-determination without external interference, the right to national independence and sovereignty, and the right to return to their homes and property from which they have been displaced. Now, you wonder if this was talked about at that assembly in 1977, and now we're in 2023. Do you think these are these are issues fueling the ongoing hostility and the crisis and the position being taken by a militant group like Hamas? Ambassador, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yeah, some of it is dropping out, but I think you're mentioning the fact that militancy came about because of a certain element within the Palestinian people fighting for their rights. We have to ask the question: do they represent all of the Palestinian people? However, in many areas of the world, wherever you have unfair treatment, people will rise and defend themselves. Whether there's a legality of representation here is another question. But I haven't got all of what you have asked, so maybe if you just repeat, I can address it firmly.
All right. Today is a day set aside for solidarity for the Palestinian people. To have solidarity, you must have understanding with the people that you stand in solidarity with. What kind of understanding should the world have with Palestine at this time?
I'm missing most of what you're saying, but you mentioned solidarity. Solidarity has to do with, do you stand up for the rights of people on both sides? Both sides are saying that they have the right for self-determination. So the solidarity has to do with who do you stand with and why? What are the what are the prevailing factors that give you, a stance of solidarity? How and why do you stand solid with either side? I think this is more a case of, going to the drawing board. As most learned people say, at the end of every war, there's always peace talks. Why don't you have peace talks from the beginning and not have the war? So that we don't have a question of whose side do we side on, because war is terrible. At the end of the day, it's still killings on both sides. There's accusations on both sides. There is, atrocities on both sides, and everybody will claim that they've had atrocities. So I am of the view that we must talk first and not end up committing the atrocities, so that we now say, who do we side with? And then it's a question of, oppositions, one side marching against the other, and you will have that conflict ongoing. Let's have the peace first, and forget about, whose side do we stand on. It's not correct, because everybody will have claims as to why you should stand behind them. I'm neither going to stand behind Israel or Palestine, because it's a conflict and atrocities are being committed on both sides. It has to do with, let us, if we are talking about humanitarianism, sit down and talk and come to level-headed agreements and arrangements.
You to assess the role being played by some international bodies and then countries like the United States as regards the ongoing hostility between Israel and Palestinian people. What should be the kind of intervention that should come from countries like the United States and the international bodies? What are your expectations in order to be able to douse this tension?
There should be honest brokers. There should be honest brokers. Do not take sides if you're talking about humanitarianism and you really want, peace in a region. Do not take sides. Be honest brokers. If you are the world policeman or you have all the power, go in there, pull everybody together, sit down and say, what are the areas of disagreements? What are the areas of concerns? What are the economics behind all of this? Because there's economics behind this. There's the draining and the putting up a new canal. There is oil, there's gas. People, don't talk about these things. But behind a lot of conflicts, whether it's blood diamonds in the Congo, whether it is gold, whether it's Libyan oil, whether it's Iraqi oil, there is always some economics behind it. And it's all about displacing people and taking resources. Let's be fair, Femi. That is really what it is. So, and many people are claiming that they want the people of Palestine to be cleared from there so that, the resources of that area can be exploited. Now, whether that is true or not, time will tell. But in the meantime, if we are talking about humanitarianism and the plight of children, the plight of people on both sides, let's, even if it has to be an economic question, sit down and why can't they say, okay, let's share, the resources and exploit it for both our benefits if we are talking about humanitarianism. So honest brokers, which, people doubt that the US and the international West are honest brokers, should now display some kind of honesty and say, let us say what is really on the table here. Is it about resources? Is it about land? Is it about what? Let's sit down together and discuss this. Let's use our human thinking and not talk about, solidarity, which side, whose side, atrocities. No. What is the real question? What is the real rationale and reason behind these conflicts?
Right. How long it will take before their peaceful negotiation, we do not know. Because looking at the Ukraine and Russia conflict, it's started like this, and before you know, it's about 2 years. So, and if it's not curtailed immediately, there is a tendency it might spiral into the rest of the Middle East. How significant is peace in the Middle East to the rest of the world?
I didn't hear all of it, but I think you're saying it might spiral into a larger conflict. If that is the case, then yes, we are talking about, the religious sentiments. Of course, the Arab world will not stand by idly and watch the Arab Muslim brothers be decimated. So the prospect of everybody, and it's already happening, of Iran, of Saudi and all others being drawn into this conflict, into what could spiral into a major conflict in that part of the world, is very, very, prevalent that it will happen. And yes, there's a possibility of this spiraling totally out of control and consuming, the whole of the Middle East. Is that what we want if we are talking about humanitarianism?
All right. According to statistics from the Palestinian Authority, about 5,500 children have been casualties of the ongoing attacks or war between Israel and Hamas. Now, you discovered that most of the casualties are children, they are women, health workers. And when it comes to the Convention of War, these are people that should enjoy immunity or being spared. But you discover that there are more of the casualties. What does this suggest to us about the dimension of this war hostility and the danger it portends for that region?
Yeah, I think you're talking about convention on making sure that in war, women and children are protected. I didn't hear all of what you're saying, but if I have to guess, yes, there's protection for women and children, and it should not happen. Absolutely should not happen on both sides. You know, I do not attest to or acquiesce to women and children being involved in conflicts and suffering, and therefore they should be protected. Whoever is responsible on both sides should be brought to the International Court of Justice. And if there are proofs, like they have had in World War I and World War II, and there are trials, these people should be brought to trial. If you knowingly, you know, pursued and inflicted death and casualties on women and children. And I think a lot of investigation should be brought and should be shown, you know, decisive evidence that this has in fact happened. I don't know, we don't know what the facts are about that, but bring the evidence, and then people who are responsible should be brought to book on either side, because it happened on both sides, although the volume that they are claiming is more on the other side. But when you weigh it up, it's not about volume, it's about the act. Who did what, and did it happen? Did you kill women and children on Israel's side? You are wrong. And if we have evidence, we bring you to book. Did you kill women and children on the other side purposefully? Then you should also be brought to book. So it's not about the volume. It's about the act. Who did what and when? And where's the evidence?
We used to have the United Nations stand as a broker of peace when there are conflicts between nations. But over time, we'll see that the stand of the UN or the effectiveness of the UN coming into conflicts between nations has not been so strong, either because the nations do not want to listen to what the UN is saying, or it seems there's a kind of mistrust. So I'm asking about the challenges with brokering peace between conflicting nations. What are the challenges? What is the approach to ensure that there is peaceful resolution of conflicts between nations going forward, so it doesn't result into a war situation?
If you're talking about the UN and the UN challenges, the UN has not also been honest brokers, if we have to be fair, in that most times they have been accused of fueling more crisis, from which they benefit, especially in resource area. And maybe they do have an agenda, allow the conflicts to carry on and for the pursuit of whoever will be the winner, because there is an agenda. If it's material, resources and exploitation, let's be fair. The UN, if they are to play their role, should have entered into the conflict from very early, and said, listen, we are going to have a UN peacekeeping force here and ensure that this does not escalate. Did they do that? Has it been done? Have they made any effort to do that? Then that tells you, you know, that's a trail. It's what we'll call a paper trail. Have they done any of that? I don't know. Do you? Are you aware? Have they entered into the conflict? Have they put down peacekeeping forces? No. You know, they're allowing the conflict to carry on. So you ask yourself, what is the role of the UN? What really is the role of the UN if they cannot intervene, if they are supposed to be the world policemen, you know, to broker peace?
All right, Ambassador, as we wrap up, what will be your counsel to the leaders of both nations who are involved in this hostility? I would like to have your counsel to the leaders of these two nations who are into this ongoing war and crisis. As we wrap up.
Yes, sit down and talk and make sure that on both sides, whatever has happened, those to be held accountable. You know, in times of war, the people who have committed crimes, you separate them from the conflict, and you make sure and show the world and show each other that you're making these people accountable. Then sit down and talk and ask, what do we want to coexist to make sure that we live in the future in harmony? Because you cannot wipe us out from the face of the earth, right? Both sides are wanting to do that. And I reference back again what has happened to the Jews in the 40s and the 30s. Extermination was the plan of Germany and, well, of the Germans under Adolf and the Nazis. So you do not want to be blamed for the same thing, that you are attempting to exterminate people and apartheid. You should even have sympathy for these people. Sit down and talk. After all, there are areas of commonality. Sit down and talk. Again, it comes back to sitting at the table and working out a relationship. There's international diplomacy, and bring on the honest power brokers, who can help to broker that peace, help to broker the arrangement and the agreements that is required for two sets of people who are families because they come from the same root, same tree, to coexist. Cousins fall out, brothers fall out, but they're from the same tree. Let us, and that tree also leads back to humanity. So we are talking about us as humans.